The time now is 6 p.m. and the meeting will commence. Could I have all those who are able to please stand for the prayer and the acknowledgement? Please stand. Almighty God, give wisdom to those in authority and guide all people in the way of righteousness and peace, so we may share with justice the resources of the earth, work together in trust, and seek the common good. Amen. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiadjuri people and recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of Aboriginal people in this land. Thank you. General Manager, are there any apologies?
Mr. Mayor, could I, whilst we're having troubles with the live feed, I'll still read out the prescription concerning the recording.
Yes, do that. Yep.
This council meeting is being recorded in accordance with council's webcasting of council meetings policy. The recording will be archived and made available for viewing at any time on council's YouTube channel for a maximum period of 12 months. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, if you are in attendance in the public gallery, you should be aware that your presence may be recorded. Your continued attendance means that you agree to being recorded and also that you will abide by the council's adopted code of meeting practice. The chairperson or general manager have the discretion to interrupt the recording of any meeting at any time should it be deemed necessary. This may occur in circumstances where commentary is considered to be misleading, defamatory or inappropriate to be published, or where behaviour breaches council's adopted code of meeting practice. Mr. Mayor, in regards to apologies, I do have apologies from councillors Rudge and Jennings.
Councillor North. Councillor Fry. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried. We come now to the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Bathurst Regional Council on the 15th of April 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Is there any discussion? No discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Also, we have the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of Bathurst Regional Council on the 6th of May 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Fry. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 6, declaration of interest. Do we have any other declarations of interest, General Manager?
Mr. Mayor, I have 2 declarations of interest. One from yourself in the Director of Corporate Services and Finance confidential section, report number 13.1.3, and one for Councillor Hanger, also in the Director of Corporate Services and Finance confidential section, and that is report number 13.1.4.
I have a mover and a second. Councillor Christians. Councillor Morse. I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 7, the Merrill minute. Councillors, I move that minute. Could I just explain a little bit out of the minutes there that has been put up? I'd like to point a few things out of that. One of them is working to keep the council financial stable, working to help businesses in the community, setting the interest rate for overdue rates at 0%, Bathurst Business Chamber assistance of $18,000, continue with the advertising in the Western Advocate and the Bathurst City Life, defer all community loans, e.g. Clay Target Club, Pistol Club, and there's a lot more there with them, waiving of some community and sporting club licence fees, waiving of library fees. So there's some of the things in the minutes, and I'd also like to thank for your contribution, you councillors, that informed the General Manager or myself before we put this here. So thank you, and I'll leave it out for discussion, and I'll start with Councillor Deputy Mayor Ian North.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm pleased to see that we're continuing to do mayoral minutes. I think we've got to continue to let the community know what this council is doing, and I certainly know every councillor here is putting ideas through to what we can do moving forward. And I think it's good to see that the infection rate in Australia, and we haven't had an infection around here for a long time, is getting better, but we can't take our foot off the brake at the moment, but we need to look forward. And I took the opportunity this morning. I've been trying to get hold of our federal member for a while. I've had a discussion with our state member that council is a bit hamstrung in what we can do. I guess we're at the coalface of the community with this pandemic, but we're seeing businesses in front of us and residents that have lost their jobs. I guess the state level is one step removed and the federal government is another step removed. What I spoke with the federal member, Andrew G, about is that one of the ideas that I'd spoken to the General Manager and the Mayor about is that to stimulate the economy, and we've got to stimulate business. One of the things I spoke to that we as a council do sell residential land, commercial and industrial land. And what I spoke to the federal member about is the potential that, just for example, a council has an industrial piece of land that maybe is worth $200,000, that there seems to be an appetite at state and federal level to promote manufacturing in our country, more manufacturing, and people to get in there and not worry as much about other countries to get their product that we could probably produce here. But maybe that a block of land that we have that may be worth 200 grand, that working with the federal government, that we say, okay, that block of land, this council will offer it at, say, at 50,000. I'm just grabbing figures to give an example. That is deferred for 2 years. That our rates on that block is deferred for 2 years. And if a business that one either relocates, and I know our federal members work very hard on decentralisation, or a new business that had an idea for ages, but that initial cost to get that block of land and to build their shed, and they could be 300,000 or 400,000 already before they've sold anything, produced anything. But I said to Mr. G that I said, well, do you think the federal government would be supportive of local government moves to encourage business? But we would need your help, and whether you can give relief to these businesses, new businesses or decentralised businesses, to come here and with tax, business tax, the corporate tax, there's probably a whole lot of things they could give relief on. And I've got to say, he was very interested, and I put it to him very bluntly. They talk at a federal level what they can do. They talk at a state level what they can do. We're doing everything we can. I think this is great what we're doing. But, I don't know if any councillor here, as Mr. G, has given you a call, or Mr. Toole has given you a call. What do you guys think you can do? I think we're all chasing these guys up, but I think they've left out local government. We need to partner more with the state and federal government to stimulate business and bring them here. That if we can get new manufacturing businesses here, we need to support them here, because I'll never forget that, and the state member, I said it to him there a while back, that when we got the 24/7 fire station, I think we got 10 new officers. Those 10 officers, I think they all had partners that they came here, and some had kids. And a lot of those partners were professional people that set up businesses in town. But if you talked on an average wage of fiery, I'm not sure, again, I'm grabbing a figure, I don't think I'm too far off, at about, say, 80,000 a year. If you bring 10 people, there's 80,000 in wages come into the community. That, do I need to ask for more time, please? But you bring that into the community, and all of a sudden that you have their partners bringing income into the community, and they're going to use our restaurants, and they're going to have the kids at our schools, they're going to use our hospitals. That in 1 year, that 800,000 in wages and income that's coming into this community, they've spent money in the community, they've brought houses. So this is what I'm saying, is it's shown in the past that we encourage, that was a state government decision, that if we need to encourage in these tough times, that maybe this council is better than not selling that land. Let's sell it at a reduced rate, defer the payments, and encourage them to come to town. And as I said, I was really pleased to see Andrew G said he would talk to other parliamentary people about it, but he said and admitted that we need to work more closely with council. So I think this is a great document. Keep doing it, Mr. Mayor, but I think we as council need to think outside the square and create relationships with the state and federal in a way that we've never done before.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll keep going down. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this document represents an immense amount of work by the Mayor's office and by the council staff. And I think you are really to be congratulated on such a detailed document, because council is a terribly important organisation in Bathurst. I would like to ask, if I may, the General Manager to explain a couple of figures so that we get it quite clear in our minds, because this document describes how we are helping the community, how many businesses we have are on hold in the community, how many businesses there are, and it's a very comprehensive document. Let's go to have a look at the end result of all this. Mr. Mayor, if I could ask the General Manager, the cost so far till June this year to cost a council is that 515,000. Is that right, Mr. General Manager?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's the estimate at this time. It is likely it will go higher, but it's only on the data we've got available.
And that's money that we haven't got in because of various activities that are not happening anymore.
It's a combination of activities that we are not receiving funds for, but also it's for some of the extra costs. And a good example, for instance, is to maintain the COVID safe distances with our field staff to keep them working. We had to go out and hire extra vehicles, and the cost of that is around $6,000 a week to do that.
And this is included in the stimulus measures, is it? We've already provided stimulus measures to the community that we discussed in the Mayoral Minute last month. Though that's 216,000. So as of now, as of the end of June, it's going to cost us $732,359. That's so far the cost to council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this stage, what we're trying to do, because the Mayor, particularly in discussions on the Mayoral Minute, said he wanted to ensure the sustainability of the council, and the idea has been to work out what it's actually costing. Some of it we still can't estimate, like we still don't know the full details of the childcare packages from the state government. We've been told a package will come through, but we don't know what the dollars will be. So some of them have got to be, we've put estimates in for some of it. But yes, the idea is to then try and balance that off out of existing budgets.
Thank you. And just to check that, in fact, in order to fund this, we are going to put some projects on hold, or maybe not do them at all. So in the next figure, we are going to save, through not doing various things in council, about 658,000 and a couple of other things. So in fact, we are going to trim our budget by $743. Is that right?
Yes, we will trim or reallocate nearly $750,000 at this stage. I'm anticipating we will have another Mayoral Minute to you in June on this topic, but it will cover more what we're going to do into 2020-21. For instance, Councillor North's comments about looking in business attraction. The Economic Development Department is looking at trying to put together a post-COVID package. Councillor Jennings spoke to the Mayor, well, through the Mayor and myself, about more stuff and packages that can be done in terms of the gift card to encourage more stimulus there. And a number of the rest of you have spoken about different ways of introducing things to make it so that we're our community groups that survive. And we'll be looking at more of those into the June Mayoral Minute.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, congratulate Council for structuring the staff such that 35 staff have been working at home, and also the fact that we have been able to retain all our permanent full-time staff. I think that's a fantastic outcome. I think this document is really good. I congratulate you, Mr. Mayor, on this. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of work for the community benefit. What Council has done has been really for the betterment of the community, well, the support of the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. I'll just comment on that the staff and the general manager, there's been no cases of COVID-19 in our setup, and that's been very pleasing. So thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Orban?
Yeah, just a quick one, and thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just reiterate a little on Councillor North with economic development. Just a couple of things that have come to pass over the last few weeks. I mean, to get manufacturing back into Australia, and as we are as local government, to get manufacturing into Bathurst. I mean, we've got a plant out here that receives pine logs, puts them into containers and sends them to China to get ground up, chipped up, and then they come back to make chipboard and things. I mean, I just don't see how that could be economically viable, and that sort of thing I think we should be looking at to put to businesses to say, look at your costs, can you set up here, that sort of thing. I mean, if you go to Coles and you buy some instant noodles, which has been, flavour of the month for the last forever, they've been off the shelf. Instant noodles, Maggi brand, MAGGI, an Australian company, made in Malaysia and made in Singapore from Australian wheat. Hello. So we send our wheat over to Malaysia and Singapore, and they make noodles and send it back. Can it be done here? I mean, it couldn't be that hard, really. There's freight costs involved there that should come into play, but yeah, I'm all with this economic development with this post-COVID. I think we should be looking really seriously at trying to attract some of that business here. General Manager, have we got any stimulus packages offered to us, as in local government, from the federal government as yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've not had any allocations at this time. We have been asked through particularly the Deputy Prime Minister's Department to list some projects, particularly road type projects for infrastructure development. I'm confident that the government, particularly through the local member, we will see some funding, but not at this stage.
And one other thing, and maybe a cost-saving measure that's actually come out of all this, and you can see if you go out to Officeworks, their whole back section is empty of office chairs and desks and that sort of thing where people have actually set up at home. Is there any plans for our staff that are working at home now to actually keep on that way and work from home, which could save a lot in renting office space? Is there anything like that in the future?
We will always continue to look at the operational styles of the organisation and how they run, and we do discuss down at an individual level. I've got to say the anecdotal evidence that we're receiving, we've got about 35 out of 430 working from home, that the majority who are working at home are looking forward to or are asking to come back to the workplace. There's a lot of talk about how great it is working from home. We're finding that the staff who probably have the greatest mental stress are those who are working from home. They find it very difficult to separate home life from work life. They also heavily miss the support structures that are in place with working with fellow workers. But certainly we're looking at that. There is a large portion of our staff that could never work from home, particularly the field staff. They've got to be out on the jobs. So we're looking at that, but we're seeing more staff asking to return back to work. Some of them, it's return, say, 2 or 3 days a week and stay working at home 2 or 3 days a week. But it is quite interesting when you see all the press saying this is going to be the new future, and there's no doubt there's going to be changes, but talking for the Bathurst Council experience, we've got a lot of people would rather be back, and I think that's fitted in with the, I was talking to Councillor Morse earlier on, 2 of the planks for the response that we put in is, 1, to keep all the employees working rather than putting anyone off. The second one is to make sure the council doesn't go unsustainable as much as we can. And the third one is we put in that structure, as you'll see in this mayoral minute and the last one, to operate remote sites. and that seems to have been quite effective, the operation of the remote sites. And how that goes into the future, a lot of that will be subject, of course, to the state and federal rules.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I didn't say either at the start that it was an excellent minute, and I think it's gone a little bit above and beyond. So excellent, thank you.
Yeah, and as I said, thank you for all you councillors that put your input into that. Is there any other discussion? Councillor Jennings?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a few quick points, and concur with everybody so far that, well done to the General Manager and the directors and all their staff on putting this together. You can tell, not just by the quantity of this document, the previous one, but also the quality of it, that no section of this organisation has been left out, and that the entire organisation has been scanned fully for savings and ways in which we can combat COVID-19. So well done. Just a very minor point on the local media support. There was mention made of the federal government's $5 million Regional and Small Publishers Innovation Fund. That's due on Friday. There is actually another grant that's been made available quite recently, which I'm sure our media presence here today will be very pleased to hear about, because it's not $5 million, it's $50 million from the Federal Department of Communications, and it's to pay for things. It's specifically targeted to C19 impacts, whereas that other grant is more for innovation and upgrading. But this one will pay for wages and salaries and the like, and travel. So you couldn't argue with that one, and hopefully it's also targeted particularly to regional areas. So it's one to support our local area, hopefully. And I would just add some comments to the General Manager made mention of the gift card. I saw the gift card competition in there, and it's actually been really well supported by local businesses, which is great to see. Also, I saw our Economic Development Manager, Stephen Bowman, give a very good presentation of Council's position to the Business Chamber during the week. But I actually also think that gift card has, under the C19 circumstances, has the potential to be used as a very powerful local economic stimulus instrument. Any money that's put onto that, is going to be spent in local shops. It would also encourage more local businesses to get involved. And there's certain sort of behavioural economics incentives that could be considered. For example, and I'm not sure, what the budget constraints might be for this, but for council to be able to offer some kind of buy local gift card as a reward for those ratepayers who pay their rates. And then that money that they spend, that they get from having paid their rates, goes straight into stimulating the local economy, because goodness knows the impacts locally, employment-wise, are pretty dire and across the country. And I'll just end with a question. Councillor Orban asked about the federal government in terms of any infrastructure for local government. I was going to ask the same. And what about state government? Is there any talk of local council, local government packages?
Yes, my understanding there is, and we have been providing information for the council, but also the Centroc group of councils. So I'm hoping that there will be a stimulus package for infrastructure development there. I have to say a lot of our time has been concentrated on the water matter and continuing to obtain more funding for that project, which I'm quite confident we will get more money. But certainly at this stage, we believe the state government also will come with infrastructure. We're waiting on the final childcare stuff, but there is certainly some childcare money that's going to be available. The recent announcement in the reduction of the emergency services levy will give us some relief, albeit that it is a state government levy. And at this stage, there is the wage subsidy scheme of the state government, but at this stage, this council is not eligible for any funding under that scheme.
Just on the gift card there, Councillor Jennings, it was pleasing to deal with a video through the week with Dan Cove from the Information Centre, and the information that over $500,000 has been spent so far on gift cards, which is really good. That's gone into the local economy, as you said. So if we can increase that, even double that, that is money staying in town. So it's well done, the gift card. And thank you, Councillor Jennings. Is there any Councillor Christians?
Yeah, it is an excellent, it's a great mayoral minute. I think council has to do everything we can to support the community, but obviously also state and federal governments have to as well. And I think what Councillor North raised is fantastic, and I think we should really follow that up. It's the state and federal governments that have called the shots and closed us down. They had no choice in that. But the Bathurst region now has gone 50 days without a new COVID-19 diagnosis, which is fantastic. We're very lucky there. So I certainly hope that the state and federal governments, they've shut us down, they've made the big calls, and now it's time for them to support us and help us through what's going to be a really bumpy ride in the next few months. Excellent work, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Anyone else for discussion? If not, we'll carried. Thank you. We'll deal with number 8, receive and deal with the General Managers and Directors report. Item number 1, section 4.15 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. Can I please have a move and a second? Councillor Orban, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, the General Report. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Morse.
Could I just ask a question, Mr. Mayor? Are we still having some DAs? Are we going down or up in number of DAs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the DA numbers have remained remarkably stable. Yes, there's fluctuation from week to week, but that happens any month of the year, any year of any year. Indeed, the number of DAs is almost the same this year as it was this time last year. And indeed, building activity, as measured by our inspectors working on sites, also remains relatively stable, quite stable.
Any more discussion? If not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Development application number 2020/115 telecommunications facility at 3805 Safala Road, Wattle Flat. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Fry, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question through you to the Director. Has this, firstly, have we had any correspondence with the local primary school that is within 15 metres of the tower? And also, the Crown owns the land. Does this provide an income to the Crown or to the RFS?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the school was included in the notification process directly to the school itself, with no submissions received as it's reported. In regard to income, yes, the Crown will receive remuneration for the use of their land. I don't know if there's any flow-on effect to the RFS.
Is there any other discussion? If not, I put the motion and call a division. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, community engagement during COVID-19 period on planning and development matters. Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Sir? Yeah. Any discussion? No discussion, then I put the motion, councillors, and call a division. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Number 5, street lighting under awnings in the CBD. Can I please have a mover and a second? Yes.
I'd just like to add point 4 that I'll see what the councillors say, but based on what the city's going through and Australia's going through, that if this was to come in, I wouldn't like to see that impost put on the businesses, because the owner of the buildings would probably put it back to the businesses. Is there a potential we could just hold this off to any implementation until, say, at least the 1st of January 2021? yeah, I'd like to add that point. I'd like to move that motion, please.
Would you like to speak on that, Director?
If I can just make some commentary around that. Unfortunately, Council is at the behest of Essential Energy. A day will come when they will turn off those lights, and unless Council has transferred, unless the access to that power supply is transferred to the property owner, it leaves Council in a very awkward position. Firstly, in terms of the payment for electricity. Secondly, in terms of metering of it. Thirdly, in terms of the physical risks associated with having public lighting on someone else's property. And fourthly, the risks associated with repairs and maintenance to those facilities, where the awnings themselves are not necessarily at compliance standard and with hazards themselves. So I fully appreciate the timeliness of this. Unfortunately, it's been driven by Essential Energy, and it's a little bit of a waiting game.
Before you have a question, I better get a seconder to what you want. Is there a seconder to Councillor Christians? Okay, question?
Question is then to the Director. I'm sure Essential Energy, like anyone else in Australia, will be feeling the impacts on this. That we, basically what I'm saying, let's leave status quo. We accept it. We're going to go down this path. Surely Essential Energy, and I would be pretty pissed off to think that they're going to push this matter, considering what our businesses are going through and the impost. We've been wearing this for a while now, for quite a while. Surely that hopefully come the beginning of next year, we're in a position that, yes, we've accepted to do it, and maybe the add-on to that point 4 is that to hold off with the approval of Country Energy to leave status quo until that, and yes, it will transfer across to the businesses at that point.
Any other discussion?
Is that possible?
Oh, yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, we can ask Essential Energy to show that level of consideration. Whether they're prepared to is unknown. However, that Council is committed with a date. I would agree with your optimism that would be of influence, and we can certainly convey that message to them.
So that can be added to that.
Yeah. Councillor Orban?
Yeah, just a quick question for the Director. Being public lighting, is Essential Energy going to give separate bills to each business for their street lighting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, point of detail, if I may, Councillor Orban. So there's the street lighting, but this is the lighting above the footpath under the awning. So the street lighting, there's a considerable amount of work underway to make sure it's that the lighting from the street lights onto the footpath is to standard. So this would require the under the awning lights to be wired into the meter of the premises, and it would be included in the bill for the premises. It would be their electricity consumption and their lights.
So I would imagine from that, I mean, that's quite a lot of work, but I would imagine from that there's no on-off switch. It's permanently on when the lights come on. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be metered separately and wired separately, and therefore would be switchable for each premises.
Councillor Morse?
Yes, may I ask a question? Can the businesses say, no, we don't want to do it? Can they just say, no, we'll forget about that, the street lights are good enough, so we're not going to put it in through our meter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. The considerable amount of work that's been undertaken to date is to firstly trial and then roll out that the street lighting should provide sufficient lighting on the footpath, and the trial results show it does, that the footpath lighting levels are not dependent on the under-awning lights. So indeed a premises could choose not to have it. Sometimes they do because it displays the merchandise in their shop window, for example, which might be a reason to continue with it. but we expect that it'll be the premises will make that choice themselves, and that would be a discussion between the property owner and the tenant.
Any other, Councillor Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just sort of concerned in the safety component of this. I remember we made a mention of it this evening, Director, and I remember in previous discussions about this. I guess my question is, how urgent are some of these safety factors? Because I'd be reluctant to delay it if there's stuff that needs to be dealt with, and they have the opportunity to opt out, and on top of that, it's really something being driven by essential energy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the safety risk goes to who's prepared to fix a broken light under an awning which might have some asbestos material, for example. So there's a separate issue about the structural integrity of the awning. We cover that anyhow as council's regulatory functions. So it goes to the risks associated with hazardous materials and things like that. Progressively, Essential Energy wants to withdraw from holding that risk. They currently undertake that work, but clearly they do not have an appetite to continue that for much longer. How much longer? We'll certainly put to them the January timetable.
Councillor Orban, you only had a question. Would you like to discuss?
Just a question. Has there been a lights off test done under awning and trialled it with the street lights only? Or is it just on paper saying that's where the lights should shine, sort of thing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it has been a physical test. That was conducted by independent consultants. Council staff and myself were present when the under-awning lights were turned off, and indeed the experts walked around with their meters at 10 or 20 metre intervals along the footpath to determine whether it was compliant with the appropriate standard, and to a very large degree it was. There's always a little pocket here or there which might not comply because of the shape of the orientation of the buildings, but generally it's compliant, yes. So that trial was conducted 2 or 3 months ago.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll get the general manager to read it out.
Mr. Mayor and Councillor North, you may just wish that in. I take it that it's that Council, 1, as written, endorse the disconnection; 2, contact property owners with affected awnings; 3, note additional information contained within the report; and 4, request that any transfer be held off till July 2021. January.
I guess we've got to premise that Essential Energy will accept that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. If Essential Energy doesn't accept that, then I would assume that basically 1, 2 and 3 go through. Yeah.
Any more discussion? Do you want to finish that off, Councillor? No. Okay, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we go to Director of Corporate Services and Finance report. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Councillor, I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, the quarterly review, delivery plan and operational plan. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? There's no discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 3, sundry section 356 donations. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Morse, Councillor Hanger. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 4, power of attorney. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hanger, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? No discussion. I put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 5, free water for vertebrate primary producers. Councillor Jennings, Councillor North. Any discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Only to say that I think this has been a successful policy and very well delivered. Even under some of the public commentary, I think there's an editorial in the paper suggested it was going to lead to disappointment when we had to turn it off, but we've managed to skim through very tight circumstances and keep it going. I think we've dealt with this maybe 4 or even 5 times now, basically because we committed to reviewing it regularly, but we've managed to be able to provide the policy consistently throughout, and now hopefully we're moving out of these dry conditions, and it'll resolve itself and won't be necessary by the next time we deal with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to Director Engineering Services Report, Water Security Update. Please have a mover and a seconder. Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Any discussion? Councillor North.
I guess the leading question is, have we had the fine print on the Critical Water Act of how it's going to operate? Has that fine print hit council yet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have certainly been listed, as you would be aware, and we've received the regulation. We're working through with the state government with some of the additional work that they've required us to do, and we'll have that to them as rapidly as we can. Have that work completed.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We got to do more work. We're on the list. Have we got to provide you stating more documents to why? What's the reason? Oh, I'm a bit lost on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we were required to provide further justification for for some of the work and how it would operate, and that's with regard to its operation using Australian rainfall and runoff guidelines, in addition to the work that we've already done. So yes, there has been additional technical data required. Sorry.
Have they been given direction by the government or our state member of that to actually get their butt into gear and actually get going? I'm sorry, what did we provide? A 700-page document with consultants, with solicitors and that to make sure to get on the list. All I keep hearing is they keep asking for more information. Do we need to go to Gladys and someone and say, for God's sake, how many documents do we need, and stop these bureaucrats with things on their desks saying we want more information? Like, this is just wasting time. Do they not understand critical? Do they not understand that a critical water infrastructure list, we're now on it? How far is this bar going to keep getting lifted? Have we got any indication that when you provide this document, that is the last document and we can start moving ahead?
I'll respond to that. Look, certainly the work that we've been required to do at this stage, we believe that's going to be the final round of documentation provided. It's those conversations with the appropriate agencies in the state government have been had as to our frustration as to the process, and so we've made it quite clear that we need this work delivered and as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, quick question to the director. Have we a start date for the stormwater harvesting?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the second route in terms of the alignment of the pipeline through the road itself is being priced. It's also been unfortunate that the principal of that company has only recently died a week ago, which caused some complexity to that problem as well. But we're certainly going through and fine-tuning the design and pricing, and once I have final detail as to when that will commence, the councillors will be advised of that accordingly.
Thank you. Councillor Christians.
Yeah, look, just to back up what Councillor North was saying, it seems like Groundhog Day to me. Every time we have this conversation, us councillors sit here like Schmendricks and just listen to the same stuff coming back from this state government. The Director of Engineering, I want a percentage. How sure are you that this is going to be the last report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I won't provide a percentage or a certainty. I can't provide guarantees. All I can do is work within the requirements of the state government, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Look, I appreciate your answer, and look, I've seen the work that this council's done, but something along the line isn't cutting through. Now, I don't believe for a second that's a council issue. I truly don't. Now, if this is a bureaucratic issue in Sydney, I want to know about it because there seems to be blockades in place. That might sound shocking to hear, but that's basically the situation I've come to. There seems to be blockades in place, and if that's true, I want to know why. Bathurst has been struggling with this water issue for quite some time now. With this coronavirus, it's predominantly in Sydney, and we're hearing this one-in, all-in approach. Well, I want the same sort of respect levelled back at Bathurst. They're not giving us the water out of the Sydney Water isn't getting on board and helping us out with this water situation. They're making it harder and harder and harder for us to the point where I think us councillors can talk about making noise, but I don't think we're doing enough. I'd actually like to see maybe Mr. Toole attend a meeting with us in the next week or so. And I just want cut and dry answers. If people can't give us those cut and dry answers, then I want to know what they're doing in their jobs. I'm sick of it. That's enough out of me. I'm sorry, but I'm over it.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Fry.
I think we should maintain the discussion as we have been, because this 0 day still, I believe, is December, and it is the most serious thing facing this council, everything else aside. So we need to be on the ball, front and centre, and as we say, active, lobbying and doing all the engineering we can. And having said that, Greening Bathurst has consulted with me and put in submissions, and I believe there's another one current just come through. They're basically the expert group of Greening Bathurst engineers and ecologists are asking obvious questions, not questioning our consultants, but just asking for confirmation of the rationale behind it. And for instance, the massive rising main that's planned to go through all our city streets, which I think I was confirmed last time that it's capable of transferring a megalitre an hour to take urban stormwater peaks, which may be of 5 hours duration. So we would get 5 megalitres out of that storm every couple of months. Excuse me. Then following that urban storm peak, there's a rural peak, which may last 50 hours. So we would then be able to pump another 50 megs of that rural stormwater peak. So I guess the question is, on this particular aspect of the pipeline, is that couldn't we just pump the rural peak at the existing water filtration plant, which would deprioritise the rising main coming from the sewage treatment plant? And has that been reviewed, that submission been reviewed by our consultants? And so I guess questioning the urgent need for the pipeline.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, our consultants have reviewed the documentation, and the reply will be provided appropriately when it can be done. The yield analysis that's been performed indicates certainly the pipeline has a lot of merit in conjunction with also pumping that spare water back to Winbandale as part of the larger scheme. It also provides the opportunity for future recycling of our effluent using the same network. And the scheme also at this stage includes a 45 odd megalitre dam within the sewage treatment plant works. So there's more to it than just pumping water for 5 hours following a storm. There will be, in terms of the analysis performed, reasonable yield out of the system, which would provide potentially a third of our water needs under level 4. So it's as far as my advice is that it's an appropriate critical needs project that will certainly have a lot of merit for our water supply system.
Are there any constraints on pumping water up to the Winbandale Dam that may not be of high quality?
Through Mr Mayor, part of that process will require pre-treatment of the water before it goes into that, in terms of removing any potential microorganisms, etc., in terms of potentially carp and all those sorts of things. So there will be pre-treatment required, which we will need to do. So it won't be just a pure transfer of raw water.
My last question was in terms of the 8 groundwater boreholes. I'm assuming that was mentioned in a report some time ago that would be roughly in an easterly direction of the existing intake weir at the water treatment plant. I don't have any more information than that, but those bores, would they include a literature review of all the previous studies done, the ground penetrating radar, electronic profiling and all that conductivity tests that were done? Again, this is my memories going back to the 70s and the 80s, and when we did the weir at the water filtration plant, we did a lot of ground penetrating information. So would the boreholes be reviewed in conjunction with that previous report?
Through Mr Mayor, the initial studies for groundwater investigation included a radius of 20 kilometres around the water filtration plant, including previous literature that was available. The locations were then shortlisted. We then conducted some seismic testing, and the location chosen, which is essentially following the town water rising main across the floodplain in a road reserve that we own across the floodplain. That's been identified as the best area for yield, and it's the drilling company has been provided the go-ahead to do that work, and we're anticipating that to, with a little luck, actually commence later this week.
But the test bores aren't supply bores, so we'd actually have to find more funding, or if we got that within the Safe and Secure budget, if we did show there was a reasonable yield, would we need to then construct a different type of bore to pump it out?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, they are test bores, so they're only a reasonably small diameter, which is funded through our existing funding arrangements. Yes, if they were indicated to be a sufficient yield, then large diameter bores would need to be incorporated to be constructed, and funding for that would need to be sourced. The literature reviews and also the seismic testing that's been done indicates that the yield is likely to be tied very closely to the levels of water in the Macquarie River itself, and so the yield is not necessarily expected to be great, but testing will reveal what that might be.
Thank you, Director. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Orban?
Yeah, just 2 quick questions. Nothing is mentioned in here on any news of the water coming from the Oberon Dam. That's obviously not needed down on the eastern side of the mountains now. And the other one was, which is mentioned here but not given any answer to, the approval from the government to reduce the environmental release from Chifley Dam. Any news on those?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, Water New South Wales and Department of Planning, Industry and Environment have recently requested information about our Chifley Dam operations and the like, to potentially inform themselves of the water release out of Oberon Dam. So at this stage, we've now requested a review of the earlier decision that was made a number of months ago. So Water New South Wales and DPI are currently still reviewing that second request. The latest discussion with regard to environmental flows out of Chifley, I had with the Department of Natural Resource Access Regulator yesterday, and I'm anticipating advice on that imminently. We were advised that the documentation was being collated at the moment for response back to Council, following our application in January for that reduction, and so I'm anticipating that documentation or response next week.
Is there any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour, those against, carried. Item number 2, removal of poplar trees from Hawthorn Creek, Jakes Park. I please have a mover and a seconder. Yes, have you got a seconder? Let's say what it is first. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Fry. It's not an amendment. You're moving a motion, but you should read out first what you want before we get a seconder, because no one knows what the motion is at this time.
Yep. So I'm moving a motion for amendment that that the poplar trees remain in situ in the park until they become a public safety risk, and the future removal happens in consultation with the local community.
Have I got a seconder to that?
I'm happy to second it for discussion.
Okay. Councillor Fry?
I'd thank the engineers for their comprehensive response, and it just shows that we do have a high level of expertise with our vegetation management, and it does reference the vegetation management plan and various other plans in terms of riparian vegetation. So it does indicate we're operating at a professional level. But there's just a couple of points I'd want to mention. That Council removed eight poplar trees, and they were identified as being in very poor condition. And I think the people that protested the removal were told that by Council. But I'm no tree expert, but to me it looked like about half were in a very poor condition and the other half were fine. They didn't need removal, but again, that's up to professional assessments. But to the general public, half of those trees look fine, and when a couple of them were cut off, they were completely safe and intact. So there's a public perception that we just took the lot out and didn't really discriminate between the unhealthy, and no one's disputing that half of them were very dangerous and needed to come out. It states that Council for 10 years has undertaken rehabilitation works. Well, I think it's, I can remember planting trees there with Neville Barlow, and I can see his name over there in the 90s. So I think this has been going on for 25 years, and I think it's been driven a lot by the community. So I think the community needs to be recognised as having a significant stake in this and doing an incredible amount of work, and a lot of non-government organisations, I'm thinking community groups, church groups, international government teams, work teams, they've been driving this, and I think they should be considered when we make big management decisions on this park, and considering the equity of the community and the community engagement. Council has been a great partner with the community groups and facilitated all this work, but I'm still saying it needs to be recognised that the community is an equal driver of this type of work. So the rationale for taking them out is that they're weeds, they're toxic, they're invasive, this sort of stuff. But Councillor North will agree with me. I think that weeds, invasive, all these terms are no longer used because they can't be proved. There's no scientific proof. So the current term, since the Act changed, is biosecurity risk. And that is, as far as I know, the sole criteria for assessing the role of a plant in the landscape. So really, talking to Greening Bathurst, they don't see them as a biosecurity risk. In terms of impacting stream health, again, talking to Greening Bathurst, they can't see how it impacts stream health in any way. And again, we might have thought that 10 or 20 years ago, but the science has now revealed that there's minimal impact on stream health, no more than a monoculture of any other plant like eucalypts or pines. And
You got 1 minute
just want to
anyway.
add that, yeah,
So-
that relating to climate change principles, which is mentioned on page 80, I don't see how it relates to climate change, because removing trees is not helping climate change. So I think justifying on a climate change basis is probably flawed. So that's my rationale for the amendment. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Orban?
Yeah, just on the report, I just don't understand, if we don't go ahead with this, what is the use or the need for an urban waterway management plan? What's the need for a vegetation management plan? What's the need for weed control plan? I think we've got enough experts in our environmental department to actually put these things into process. And one line in the report, the reason for the removal was the ongoing protection and environmental enhancement of the Hawthornden Creek waterway. Full stop, nothing else to say.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Councillor Morse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak against the amendment, because the amendment implies that no trees should be cut down, whereas the actual report, and I will read from the report, says the popular removal only relates to trees within the riparian vegetation zones. In other words, it's only trees that are in that creek and are affecting the creek. There is no intention or reason to remove any popular trees located within the park that are located away from the creek. So we all like trees, particularly we like poplar trees. When you go into Orange, there's all these beautiful trees. They're not in a creek. We all want to save our trees. There's been a lovely photograph by a drone of Lambert Street and the trees. They're absolutely beautiful, and I think that we would all be very sad if any of those trees were cut down. But we're not talking about cutting down lovely, lovely trees for the sake of cutting down trees. And I think we must be very, very careful not to work against what Councillor Orban is saying, the health of the Hawthornden Creek. In Australia, we've had all these exotic, we had willows, we've had poplars, they're lovely, they're really beautiful, but they were not suitable in many cases for the Australian landscape and Australian waterways. Many of us know what we've done to take out willows and how much water willows drink up from all the creeks. And in this case, I repeat, and I would really like to vote against the motion or the amendment. The popular removal only relates to trees within the riparian vegetation zones. And we have had expert opinions. We have had some words that I really quite don't understand. They're so technical. We employ people to be technical, and that's what they're there to give us our expert advice. So I really think we should vote against the amendment, in which case I would ask, does that then go back to the original recommendation?
General.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be up to the council if the motion, because it's not an amendment, if the motion moved by Councillor Fry is defeated, then there is nothing on the table, and it is up to councillors to then move a new motion. And the only thing is, if the new motion was to be what's worded in the recommendation, there's a slight change to that that would be appropriate to move to reflect what is the two recommendations on page 61 of the report. But at the moment, the only thing on the table is Councillor Fry's motion. That's right.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'd like to just sort of cut to the chase on this and find out how do the staff interpret the proposed motion relative to the recommendation that was in our business papers, that the poplars stay until as late as possible, and then the community is consulted prior to them being cut down. Does that actually change the content of this item particularly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it does. The staff recommendation is to remove the trees in accordance with the adopted Bathurst Urban Waterways Management Plan practices and also in accordance with Vegetation Management Plan practices. At the moment, the motion that, and I've added a couple of words to it, Councillor Fry, if you don't mind. I've got that council, one, leave the remaining poplars in Jakes Park until they become A, a risk to public safety, and B, then any such action to remove the poplar trees be preceded by public consultation.
Could I just ask a
hang on a
question
minute.
on that? I mean, they're talking
Excuse
about
me,
the path
Councillor
of the
Moss.
river. It's not clear what this amendment is. It's very, very unclear.
You've had your chance, Councillor Morse.
All I can say is that's the motion from Councillor Fry to leave the remaining poplars in Jakes Park. So I assume that to mean every poplar in Jakes Park, but from a staffing point of view, that specifically refers to the two that are in the riparian zone. Mark, and I'll get you to agree. Yeah, riparian zone that the council and staff are intending to remove. They're not at this stage intending to remove any other poplars.
Okay. Is there any other discussion?
Just to finish off on that,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy actually to see the poplars be removed, which is against the motion I supported, on the basis that the replanting goes ahead. And I think this actually should be a good news item overall. When you look on page 59, it says that it's council's intent per the existing environmental program that poplar tree removal works will be followed with a series of community and school tree planting days overseen by council's community engagement officer and environmental programs coordinator, and that they've been positive and they'll be helping to revegetate Hawthornden Creek and Jakes Park, etc. So I guess I've got maybe a follow-up question. How do the community find out about these works at the moment? Can they not ring up, stay in touch, become aware of them through their own actions?
Through Mr. Mayor, in terms of the work that has occurred, we basically enacted the recommendations of the Urban Waterways Management Plan. In terms of the proposed work, in terms of the community plantings to occur after the proposed removal of the poplars within the creek, yes, that would be certainly well publicised for the local community, be that who that may, to participate in those planting events.
Any more discussion? Councillor North?
Yep. I get a bit of a response to Councillor Fry with the understand about weeds, and I know what he says with as my situation as chairman of the Upper Macquarie County Council, which is the Weeds Council. Our priority is to work with the identified weeds and put our effort into that. And as it says in here in the top of page 57, although not identified a weed of significance, through our documentation, we've identified it as a problem. Now, in the time I've been here, and I think further up at Hawthorn Creek, I think the area behind CSU coming then through, what would be road? At the back of it where you head up to the tip, where that and the work that was done in that area there. Can't think, what's that road? College, yeah, of course, yes, thank you. And the work that's been done going through there, I think back, and under when we had Lake Calf Knowles in charge and it brought in the vegetation management plan, that plan, based until what was it last year, early this year, has lived as a plan that we've continued to work with. And I think for someone who didn't understand the value of probably the creeks and our waterways, to see the difference in our creeks and waterways all around the Bathurst region from a document that was back in 2004, I think it started. And then ever since then, it's lasted until just recently, and it's been modified. And through that whole time, things like it being identified, and I guess the public have had a chance that if they had a problem with poplars, but if we need, and the experts have come out and said that it's affecting our waterways and our creeks, and I would hope that the council that's on our teams his background was, I think, horticulturist for 6 or 8 years, and I'd be interested to know that if you're going to talk about this matter, it's funny not having him here, about the impact of taking these out, the impact it's going to have on the creek bed, and how far do we go with taking these trees out. So I've lived on a document for a long time that has done a wonderful job on our waterways, and I think at this last hour I can understand what the people said. It's something they've seen there, they've lived in the area, but I'll relate back, and Councillor Burke, the Mayor, will remember when we took down the trees along Havana Street, we were called some incredible names. That what we pulled that down, and I had an argument with the general manager, who's still our general manager, that we've got to leave a tree or two available so the public can see them, because everyone said we're healthy trees. There were some massive trees there, and they were eaten out the centre, absolutely in a bad way. And I had to trust the experts and the technology at that time, and we said, leave it down there to see the public, because I'm sick of them saying that what we did was totally a wrong thing. Now, I look along Havana Street now, and those trees, wonderful plantings. We took a safety look at it, and we said we've got to remove them and do the right thing, put new trees in that will give a future we won't need to pull down. We've followed a report for a long time, and right at the last minute, there's a group that's upset, and I can understand they've lost something that they felt was dear to them in that park and a view, but there's going to be plantings done, and we're going to have a new view and a new feel about that park, that like we have with down on Moores Park, that I think is a job well done, and congratulations staff. But I do understand where people are coming from, but this document has held this council strong for quite a long time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Christians?
Yeah, I just wanted to basically jump on the back of what Councillor Jennings said. It probably should be a good news story all in all. Rip these out and replace them with natives and get school kids to do that. I think it'd be fantastic. If they're anyway, look, if they're in the vicinity of 60 or 70 years old, they probably don't have one left anyway. You got to check them for fungus and stuff like that. However, they need to be ripped out. The way it's being done, chopped off at the base and then poisoned, that protects the structural integrity of the bank. And I think get the kids involved and get on with the show. I can understand the concerns of the community. However, they have to understand that, yes, we have experts in this field that are looking at this. And trees such as this can be a hazard for creeks and chatter creeks up and the like. So get some natives in there, everyone should be happy. I think they'll look great.
Thank you, Councillor Christians. Any more discussion? If not, do you want to write a reply there, Councillor Fry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I think we all agree that no one's trying to protect unsafe trees here. If you go for a drive around, I don't know, Rockley, Taranah, right across our whole region, there are rows and rows of poplars all through the landscape that are quite healthy, and they were planted there for aesthetic reasons, or because they remind us of Europe, or they were used as livestock fodder. So there's a whole range of reasons, but generally aesthetics, I guess. So they exist right across our local government area, thousands, if not tens of thousands of poplars. It does seem slightly insane to cut two down at huge expense, and I'm talking 20-ton excavator, a chipper, blokes with chainsaws, thousands and thousands of dollars to take these trees out when they really don't have to go. And they were actually planted on the outside of a curve to stabilise the creek. They were often, willows and poplars were brought in to stabilise the creek bed after the colonialists had cleared all the land. They'd cleared right down the riparian zone. So these were the quick fix plants. They were band-aids. And the root profile actually stabilises the creek bed, contrary to what we see and hear in other areas. So I'm just saying, we've got thousands of poplars in the whole low government area. Why can't we leave two in? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. I'll get the General Manager to read out for all.
Mr. Mayor, I have the resolution that Council 1 leave the remaining poplars in Jakes Park until they become A risk to public safety, and B, then such action to remove the poplar trees be preceded by public consultation.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? Carried. Lost, I mean. Lost. 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 You got close there. Lost. Right, I'll call on any.
Yeah, could
You
I
got
move another motion then?
Yes,
Is
you
that the
can.
time to
Yes.
do that? Well, I'd like to move the recommendation, but part two, and I'm not quite sure how to put this, that council undertake a programme of tree planting in Jakes Park itself as soon as possible. Well, you're.
Hang on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could I just ask, there's the recommendation, but it should tie into page 61, and there was a little bit missed. So could I ask that council can give consideration to that council, A, continue with its ongoing environmental rehabilitation program in accordance with the various management plans that have been adopted by council, and B, continue with the proposed environmental rehabilitation activities at Hawthorn and Creek, Jakes Park, as detailed within the Director of Engineering Services.
You happy with that, Councillor Morse?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr.
We've got a
Mayor.
seconder, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Number 3, proposed partial road closure, Marsden Lane, Kelso. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? No discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to Director of Cultural and Community Services report. Closed circuit TV, CTV. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North. Councillor Jennings. Any discussion? Councillor Christians.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is a long time coming. 19 cameras is just fantastic. I think the conversation may have started back around 1997. And we've got this done with the help of the federal government. I think it's just absolutely outstanding. But what more can I say? The community screamed out for it and delivered.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor North.
Yeah, just a big thank you to find this service going on. It's been a bugbear of mine for a long time. But I asked the question last time, I'll ask it again. The issues we had early on with the cameras, has that all been sorted out with the police and their feeds into the police station?
Staff have been speaking with the police, and yes, it will be. I don't think it's quite connected as yet, but as soon as it is, it will be.
Councillor Fry.
Sorry, I might have missed something here. I thought the police had to have a warrant to access this data.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the police can view monitors. The police can access the information on their screens. To go to a court case, they must come to the owner of the scheme, which is us, and seek that information. But they can bookmark events and view it. But to get the data on a memory card, they were required to come into the council.
Any more discussion? Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I asked a while ago about whether or not facial recognition technology was being used by New South Wales Police. I think the answer was don't really know for sure one way or the other. Is that still the case, and can we find out?
I do not know whether the police use facial recognition. I'm certainly able to ask the question of them if that's what you require. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be good, and particularly in light of a story that came out today that a 32-year-old man was found and reconnected with his parents, I believe, in China, after having been stolen as a baby. Separated entire life, facial recognition technology linked him up and reunited him with his family, which is pretty amazing given they didn't have any other connections. So anyway, the facial recognition technology is interesting, particularly the social media scraping function that's involved in that. I'm happy to talk to you about that later.
Thank you, Councillor Jennings. Any more discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 2, Director of Cultural and Community Services report. I'll move in a seconder. Councillor Jennings, Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Councillor Morse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you read through this, you realise just how much we're doing in all our areas of cultural and community services. I don't think we're promoting it enough. We keep seeing on Facebook and other places all these musicians or people dressing up and going out and putting their rubbish out, dressed as Elvis and all sorts of things. But what council's actually doing through some of these programs is well worth a whole lot of publicity. The Facebook page of the art gallery is fantastic. And I see here that the Youth Council have created videos. They've all sorts of things are happening. So could we please promote it more? Can we have a column saying this is what we're doing? Promote the whole thing. I just don't feel that we know enough. And all these lovely programs at the library. I had a letter the other day from a lady who said she's 87, she's socially isolated, and the library is her second home. And she's missing that. So the people in the community just love the library, they love the children's things, and they love the art gallery. And I would really like to see us promoting it more. There's some really funny things on there. We're doing some great stuff. So congratulations to all the staff that are doing this. I was told today that, in fact, people going to the Visitor Information Centre, which is actually closed, but they can talk to somebody inside. So we're not promoting that enough either. So please let's tell everybody how good we are.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 9, reports of other committees. We go into the Traffic Committee report, 7th of April 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We go to the Traffic Committee report on the 5th of May 2020. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Orban, Councillor North. Any discussion? No discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 10, there's no notices of motion. There's no rescission motion. So we go to number 12, councillors' delegates' reports. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor North, Councillor North. I got North and North.
I thought you said North and
No, I got North and North. Did I? Oh, okay. So then, we'll move on. Is there any discussion? We've had enough of that. There's no discussion. Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 13, resolve into confidential committee of a whole to deal with the confidential report. Councillors, could I have a motion to go into confidential meeting of council? Councillor North, Councillor Orban. Are there any members of the public and press who wish to make representation to the council as to whether the matter should or should not be dealt with in confidential committee? As there are no representations, I now put the motion to go into confidential committee. Can I have a mover and a second? Councillor Jennings, Councillor Orban. Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Mr Mayor, Council has just met in closed committee and has made the following recommendations. Item 1 of the Director of Corporate Services and Finance, renewal of licence agreement for Part Lot 40 in DP 1056379 Sulman Park for the Panorama Motorcycle Club. And the Council has proposed that Council approve entering into a new licence agreement for Part Lot 40 in DP 1056379 located at Sulman Park, Mount Panorama, with the Panorama Motorcycle Club for a period of 10 years with an option for a further period of 10 years as detailed in the report. The next item, number 2, is to do with a rural licence agreement for land at Rankin's Bridge Reserve, and the Council recommendation is that Council approves entering into a rural licence agreement for Part Lot 103 DP 106130, Part Lot 94 DP 879007, Part Lot 92 DP 865590, Part Lot 10 DP 872516, Part Lot 7004 DP 102346, and Part Lot 7005 DP 102346, known as Rankin's Bridge Reserve, as detailed in the report. Item 3, commercial and residential tenancy relief package. That A, for commercial tenants who are eligible for relief under the National Cabinet Mandatory Code of Conduct, SME commercial leasing principles during COVID-19, the code. 1, Council defer 50% of the rental payments for commercial tenants who are continuing to trade, or defer 100% of the rental payments for commercial tenants who have ceased trading, commencing from when the commercial tenant became eligible for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic as defined in the code, or when the commercial tenant ceases to be eligible, whichever occurs first. And 2, Council apply a freeze on rent increases for the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic as defined in the code. And B, for the residential tenants who are financially disadvantaged by COVID-19 as defined by the regulation, on application by the tenant. 1, Council defer a percentage of the rental payments for a period of 6 months or until the COVID-19 pandemic has ended, as defined by the Australian Government, whichever occurs first. And 2, the percentage deferred is equivalent to the percentage reduction in household income of the tenants. Mr Mayor, I'll leave the next item because that should be handled by separate resolution, because Councillor Hanger declared an interest but also left the room. Item number 5, land release Lime Kilns Road, Kelso, Sunnybright Estate, Stage B, release subdivision. The Council approves the release for sale of 39 lots, namely Lot 116 to 154 in the new residential subdivision be known as Sunnybright Estate, Stage B release, located at Lime Kilns Road, Kelso, under the ballot system. And B, grant approval for the General Manager to finalise lot sale prices and process once registration has occurred as detailed in the report. The next item is purchase of 36 William Street. The position is that Council purchased 36 William Street, Bathurst, being the former ambulance station, as detailed in the report. The next item is Regional Express landing charges, and the recommendation is that Council act in accordance with the recommendations of this report. The next item is to do with road widening on Lime Kilns Road, and it's the proposal is A, approve the proposed road widening affecting Lot A in DP 380082 and Lot 2 in DP 808976 at Lime Kilns Road, Lime Kilns, and dedicate the road to the public. Approve the terms as proposed as detailed in the Director of Engineering Services report. The next item is road widening at Napoleon Reef, and it is that Council approve the proposed road widening of Napoleon Reef Road affecting Lot 96 in DP 755784 in Napoleon Reef and dedicate the road to the public. 2, approve the partial closure of Napoleon Reef Road and upon closure transfer the land to the owner of Lot 96 in DP 755784. And 3, approve the terms proposed as detailed in the Director of Engineering Services report. The next item is to do with the Aquatic Centre, and that is that the information be noted. The next item is a variation of the contract for the construction of Howard's Bridge on the bridle track, and that is that council accepts the variation to contract 36.00732 in the amount of $276,463, GST inclusive, subject to provisional items and variations. The next item is Water Security Project Wimbendale Dam, and that is that council note the report provided by the Director of Engineering Services in relation to the Wimbendale Dam pipeline project, and B, that the Wimbendale pipeline project is necessary and appropriate for the security of the Bathurst Town water supply. And that's the items that we need to be adopted first, which Councillor Jennings and Orban have moved.
Thank you, General Manager. Now I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried.
Mr Mayor, then the other item, Councillor Hanger will need to leave. And we need a move and a second.
Another mover and a second. Councillor North, Councillor Jennings. I'll put the motion.
I've got to read the.
I'll read
sorry.
it. Yeah.
And this is the purchase of part lot 31, Boundary Road, Evans Plains, and that Council A purchased the property known as part lot 31, DP 871410, Boundary Road, Evans Plains, as detailed within this report, and B, classify the land as operational under the provisions of Section 31(2) of the Local Government Act 1993.
Put the motion again. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Item number 12, the meeting is closed. I declare the meeting closed at 8:06 p.m. Thank you for attending, and could I please have the recording device be turned off, please?